So let's dive into an example. Let's look at conservation as the theme. We live on the African continent, many of us, and the African continent is famous for the amount of wild spaces that it's created for wild fauna and flora. So perhaps we could stand in front of guests and share that that is the theme for this evening. So ladies and gentlemen, this evening, I'd love to present a wine experience for you where we focus in on some of South Africa's top family-owned wines. And we are going to choose wines that have a huge investment and passion for conservation. In other words, they're giving back to their land, they're giving back to nature, and they are really investing in conservation in South African wine. So to start with, I would love to offer you an aperitif. We have a beautiful Paul Cluver Sauvignon Blanc, light and fresh, from high up in the Elgin Valley in South Africa. And what we love about Paul Cluver is that they have effectively given over half of their land back to conservation. It's been a proclaimed conservation area. And you know what's amazing about this is when you have vineyards adjacent to conservation areas, there's a huge proliferation of birds and insects, and those natural predators of some of the enemies of vineyards, like other insects and things that might be a threat to vineyards, actually are beneficial, and the vineyards benefit from that. Furthermore, that investment in conservation has led to wonderful biodiversity. I saw a camera footage just yesterday of a beautiful leopard walking alongside the Paul Cluver mountainside next to the vineyards. So there's wild leopards that are protected there. So now we've offered guests a theme. We've given them signs of quality, family owned. We're taking them through a journey which has a emotional connection. Remember, we've spoken about all those neuro sort of chemicals that we can release and help guests have a connection and a real love for a product, not through facts about the product, but through understanding the people and the place and the theme. Then we can move into the rest of the courses. I wouldn't necessarily make a whole speech right at the beginning. We just dive into the individual wines. So the next course, we could be exploring, the Radford Dale Organic Touchstone Chardonnay, which is an incredible organic vineyard high up in the Elgin Valley again. And they are so committed to organic farming as well as sustainability. Everything from the farming techniques to choosing of lightweight bottles is a huge commitment to sustainability at Radford Dale, which we absolutely adore. Then you could do a traveling hero brand like Painted Wolf, which is really invested in conservation. Perhaps you travel to the Swartland and enjoy their Swartland Syrah or Red Blend. And that story is incredible because Painted Wolf gives a percentage of all of their revenue back to conserving the African wild dog, which is an extremely endangered and most incredible animal in the African safari industry or in the African bush. And in fact, I was very lucky to be in Malawi when they were just releasing Painted Wolf or wild dog back into Malawi for the first time in, I think, 40 or 50 years. And that had been partly due to the funding of Painted Wolf wines back into that project. So every sip, effectively, you're giving back to conservation. So again, we're focusing on the theme, then we're focusing on the people, sharing those stories about the people and the brand values that they aspire to. And then we're also bringing in the place, Elgin, the Swartland. And suddenly you've created an emotional connection for guests on a wine tasting, and you haven't gone into detail about the amount of oak, the pH, the acidity, the alcohol, the fermentation. You have spoken about theme, people, and place first. That, if you can achieve that, you can create the ultimate tasting experience for your guests.